Hey everybody, my name is Spencer, and in this crowdfunding preview sponsored by Red Raven Games, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Song of Silveranth to help you to determine if it's a good fit for you. Now before we get any further, I do need to disclose to you that the elements of the game you see in this video are from a preview version of the game. This is in no way a final copy. Some elements are professionally printed, some are handmade, so essentially what you're going to see is not a reflection of the finished version. Alright, let's get into the story of Song of Silveranth and go over what the objective is. Ven is the main character, and the story is about him and his family's plight. The story opens one morning on the family farm and glass-blowing factory when some soldiers hut up their way and arrest Ven's father. They take him off to some debtor's prison, and we don't really know much else about his arrest. The only thing we really do know is that he seems to be in a massive amount of debt. And so the game kicks off with the objective being hold on to the family farm and glassblowing factory, earn enough money to be able to pay the debt, and finally rescue Ven's dad. Unfortunately, Ven doesn't have to go about this alone, so he is joined by a large variety of characters of various origins. The game is for 1 to 4 players, with each player controlling only one character. The exception to that is if you're playing solo, in which the maximum characters you will control is 2. Now these characters I'm showing you are the starting characters, the ones you can choose from the very beginning, but one player must always play as Ven. There will be unlockable characters that you will encounter as you play the game, so I'll hear a couple of examples of those as well. All right, let's talk about what kind of game this is. Song of Silveranth is, at its core, a cooperative, open-world exploration adventure game. There's a large branching narrative that's impacted by the choices that you make throughout the course of the game. Each campaign that you play of this game is going to be very different based on the choices that you make and the directions you go while you're exploring the map. This is a big game. There's a lot to explore, a lot to read, a lot to navigate, many choices to make. In fact, it's the largest game of its kind that Red Raven has made to date. That means that not only are you going to experience a ton of variety along the main quest as you go, but you're going to be also picking up several side quests that you're going to try to complete, and that's going to impact your journey as well. Those side quests may mean that new objectives will pop up, and thus may even impact your ultimate goal in completing the game. Now, the game uses a deck of event cards to keep track of the days as you play, and at the beginning of the game, that deck is 50 cards. However, certain events and mechanics can cause you to gain or lose cards in that event deck, thus increasing or decreasing the amount of time you have to play your campaign. Ultimately, the game is either over by finishing a certain quest, or once that event deck runs out. Now, something I think that is really important to share, and I think is somewhat unique to this game, is that you don't really lose. Characters can die, and it takes a lot to kill a character, but even so, you can swap out with characters that aren't currently being played, so even if you do die, you can just get another character. Now, your campaign may reach an unfavorable ending, but your adventure is never really cut short. There's not a game over screen or anything. You will finish a campaign for better or for worse. All right, now I want to briefly talk about the game structure and also highlight some key mechanisms that I think you should know about. Now, this is not meant to be an exhaustive rules overview or anything like that. I'm only going to talk about the things that I think are relevant for you when it comes to making a decision about the game. Each game turn is called a day, and on a day, the active player will choose whether the party ventures or rests. And like with most cooperative games, the party can discuss what is best for the group to do, but ultimately, it is up to the active player to make the final decision. If you're not the active player, you can still take part in the adventure by playing various adventure cards and taking part in skill tests. Now, on most days, you'll choose to venture because that's the most exciting thing to do, that's where all the action happens, and so I want to go over that really quick with you. Fortunately, you've got this handy guide card that's multiple-sided with a summary of many important things to do in the game, but most importantly, it talks about what you do when you venture and when you rest. So let's start with venture. When you venture, the first thing you'll do is draw an event card, which again is ticking down that timer of the game that you have left to play. Most of the time, that event card that you draw is going to be something that you deal with later, and I'll explain how that happens here in just a bit, but just know that you will draw an event card every time you venture. After you venture, you may move the group token that is represented by this then on a horse miniature, and that can go up to 2 spaces on the atlas. You don't have to move, but you can go up to 2 spaces. Whether or not you move, you look down at the atlas and choose to explore either a storybook or location space. For a storybook encounter, you'll take the storybook and turn to the encounter that's listed on the page. And in this case, I would turn to number 5. I'd read a passage and then I'd be given some sort of choice sometimes. Sometimes it's not a choice. Sometimes you just gain the thing that it says. But sometimes you can see in this example that you have a choice of what to do. Some will involve doing a skill test. Whatever the case, this might be a little bit familiar to you. Now, location counters allow you to essentially zoom into a place on the map. In this case, you're going into this cave that you see here, and you're going to open up a separate book of locations. Pardon my focus up here. It's a little blurry because of my depth that I have going on here, but you get the idea of what a location looks like. You have some introductory text down here. You also have some monsters set up. Some of these locations are 2 pages. This is only 1, and we only have 1 type of enemy, but we've got Tarnished Fairy, and then depending on player count, you're going to put some of these out here. If you only see a triangle here, I'm going to put 1 down. I'll lay it down so you can see what it looks like. These will have, like, if there are 3 squares on it, that means you only put it there for a 3-player game. This one's got 4 squares under it, so you put it there only for a 4-player game, but it's balanced based on player count. And you'll have enemies on the map that are going to run around and try to get you. You will also place your own character standees in the game or on the location. And so as you play through your time here at the location, you can move your character individually so that you're not just moving as a party. You can make individual choices. While you're here in the location, you have what's essentially this character phase and enemy phase location situation going on here. This essentially takes part in the same day that you're playing as, but this sequence repeats over and over again with your character choosing to potentially do a stealth check to avoid enemies. You can move around and then either attack or engage with a certain point of interest on the map. Might be here picking up a resource, might be over here picking a lock. You get the idea of the various places you can interact with. This is a particular type of test you can do. And then after each player activates on the character phase, then the enemies will go, they'll move, and then attack. But of course, if you have done the stealth check, they don't know you're there, and so you can explore quietly and hopefully avoid the monsters if that's your goal. But again, this particular phase right here will repeat over and over again until you decide to leave the location, which the neat thing is you don't have to make your way back to the entrance. You can just say, hey, we're done here, we're going to leave, and then you return to the atlas. Now, during your venture, in addition to what I just talked about, you may also choose to do a minor venture action, and you can do these once per day. One of the things you can do is an event action, which, as I was talking about before, this is where you're going to resolve some of those event cards that you have laid aside. You really want to take care of these and resolve them, because if you ever get 4 laid out without resolving any of them, you're going to lose hope. If you lose too much hope on the hope board, you'll be forced to rest, so really, you want to take care of those event cards as best you can. Another thing you can do is to sing a spell song. Those are pretty cool. I'll explain how those work later on in this video. If you're at a location that has the market icon, you can go to the market and draw 7 cards from that market deck, look through them, see if you want to buy any of those items, and put the rest away. The last minor action that you can do on a day is attack. Some of those event cards that I was talking about may place an actual enemy on the atlas that's going to chase you around until you either find some way to deal with it or you attack it and finish it off. Now, if you're ever unsure of what to do when you're venturing, you always have a number of active quests available that will help guide you on where to go. So for example, this is one of the starting quests, and it gives a little summary of what's been going on, but also we look down here. My cousin Nat urges me to meet with Lord Muric to ask for more time. He has a house to the southwest outside of Muriel. So there's a little hint of the direction we could go to progress on this quest. Now, you don't always have to choose what to do based on your active quests. It is an open world, and you are free to explore and go about and cause havoc and all kinds of craziness. In fact, you can stumble on more quests just by being curious. But if you do want to make progress towards the goals in the game, you'll want to refer to those active quests to give you clues on where to go to make progress. Now, as you venture, you'll take damage, use up adventure cards, gain afflictions, all kinds of bad things can happen to you. Now, the most efficient way to deal with these setbacks is to rest, so when a new day rolls around, it may be a good idea for the active player to choose to rest instead of going out and venturing. Now, when you rest, the first thing you do is you discard 3 cards from the event deck. It takes time to rest, so you got to do that. then you may fast travel to any haven location that you previously visited. Here's an example of that. It's a location, as long as it's got this little bed symbol, you can fast travel there. You don't have to if you don't want to, though. Then you can heal, and then some other upkeep things are repairing equipment, any armor that you've damaged through using it. You can also remove an affliction. Afflictions are cards like this that you'll get as you take damage. They're going to be long-term afflictions, things that impact you negatively, again, until you remove them. And one of the ways you do that is by resting. You can swap characters if your character has too many afflictions, or you just you're curious about trying a different character that you've unlocked. You can do that here. And then finally, you're going to shuffle any adventure cards that you've played back into your deck, and any spell songs that you have used will go back into the spell song deck. So in summary, you shouldn't need to rest often, but when you do, it is a super efficient way to manage the wear and tear on your party. And that's really the structure of the game. You'll continue on either venturing or resting until you reach an end in one of your quests, or like I said earlier, that event deck runs out. Now, I don't know any of the potential endings that the campaign has in store. I've only been giving a very small portion of the game to try out here. I have been told a few things about the end of the game, and I want to read a couple of these notes with you just so you get an idea of how a game might come to an end. Now, as you get closer to the end of the game, you may reach a point of no return, which means that the game will warn you that if you proceed, you may no longer explore the world and must continue down a certain story branch. You will have to decide then if you're ready to proceed, or if you want to go back out into the world and come back later. Another note that I have here is that some choices you make in the storybook can lead to a bad end, and when this happens, the storybook will tell you to use what's called a turn of fate, which rewinds time, essentially, to a point before you started down a path that led to that bad end. Now, this saves you, but you'll also have to discard 3 cards from the event deck and mark a box on your journey log. And one final note that I have here is that while you'll most likely find an ending through the quests that you complete, even if you do run out of time because you've gone through all the cards in the event deck, there will still be an ending for you. You're not met with just a bland game over. There'll be some kind of thematic way that the game ends. All right, that is the framework of Song of Silveranth, but there are a few key mechanisms I want to demonstrate for you now that I know you'll be curious about. All right, let's begin with combat. So this is a very basic example. We're going to go back and say we're fighting this lizard wolf that we saw earlier. First thing you're going to do is choose a weapon to attack with. Now, I'm going to go with this soldier spear, and at most you can have 2 equipped whenever you're heading into battle. So the first thing a weapon will show you is how many dice you roll. And these are D6s, so I'm going to roll 2 dice and see what my result is. Oh my gosh, okay, so I've got 2 6s. That's great because those are considered hits. You have 2 sections on this card. One are your blunder dice, and one are your hits. If you roll a 1, 2, or 3, that die is going to go on this side. If it's a 4, 5, or 6, it's going to go over here. Let's say I didn't roll as well. I'm going to roll, let's say the other one was a 2. If I can find it. There it is. All right, so I would place the 6 here and the 2 here. What you don't want is you don't want your blunder dice, the number of pips on those, to equal or exceed the defense value of the enemy. Whenever that happens, your attack is considered a miss and you don't land any damage. At this point, I've rolled 2 dice, and now I will make the choice to continue rolling 1 die at a time, either until I miss, again, if these over here total more than this number, or I decide to stop, or the enemy's defeated. So I'll roll 1 at a time. Let's say I roll another one. Went off frame. Okay, that's another hit. Let's roll again. All right, that's a miss. So now my total over here, or that's a blunder, my total over here is 4. If I get 1 more, all of these hits that I've landed don't do anything. They're wasted. So it's a pressure luck kind of thing going on here. So I'm going to choose, in this case, I would probably choose to stop. I'd walk away. I would deal the number of hits, which is 1, 2, plus any additional damage that the weapon provides, which would be 1. So this would be a total of 3 hits, and I would put that damage on the enemy to show that I've done 3 out of 7 that's needed to defeat it. Every time you attack, the enemy will counterattack. In this case, it will be 3. And then you continue that cycle until either, again, the enemy is defeated, or you find some other way to defeat it or for it to go away. So in this case, you could also do an event action, which is a stealth check to discard the enemy. It would just go away. Some other things on the weapon, some weapons have critical hits. So what this means is if your total hit dice over here, the number of pips on those equal to or exceed 20, you'll deal additional damage. So this would be 3 for this weapon. So if I continued to roll dice and I didn't have any blunders over here that would push me over the edge of 5. Let's say I rolled another 6, that'd put us at 18. Let's say I rolled a 4, that'd put us at 22. So then my total for this attack would be 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 1, 5. And then because this total, the total of these pips exceeds 20, that's an additional 3. So that's 8 damage for this attack, which would defeat this monster. Some weapons also have additional attributes like vulnerable, which means you take extra damage if you fail. Also, there's block 1, so whenever the enemy does a counterattack on me, I block one of those damages. It all depends on the weapon that you're using. One thing that's important to note, though, is if I were, I think I already said this, but I want to say it again, if I had exceeded this total of 5, equal to if I met it or exceeded it, then no matter how much damage I did over here, I would consider a bust, and I would deal no damage, but I would still take the counterattack damage. Now, when it comes to those dice rolls, you may want to mitigate those by re-rolling or adding or whatever. There are items in the game and ways to deal with that. For example, on the hope board, you can lose 3 hope to re-roll any one die, 1, 2, 3. But also, some of the resources you have help you out. So like the rope right here, you can spend a rope to re-roll a weapon die. Or again, it's got a double usage. But again, just showing you that there are ways to deal with those dice if you ever run into some serious situations. The next thing I want to talk about are discourse challenges. You'll mostly find these inside the storybook. You'll look like this. It'll say discourse. Convince Sir Farius to join you. Your resolve is 8, break is 7, and counter argument is 3. Essentially, you're getting to an argument with the person, trying to convince them of your perspective, and I'm going to show you how to do that. This works very much like combat. The same basic dice rolling applies here. Your character will start with their basic argument, but you can get various things to add to that. So their philosophies, for example. So astute observation, I would tuck this under here as well. And you can see here that it looks very similar to the weapon card of there are 2 sides of blunder dice and successes. The difference here is how you're going to keep track of the progress of the discourse. You will place your discourse marker where the current hope level is, and you will place the other person's discourse marker at their resolve, which in the example of this one is 8. So I'll put that down here. Every time you deal a successful quote-unquote hit, the other person's marker will go down, and then every time they deal their counterattack, which in this case is considered counter argument, you will go down by the number listed. So in this case for this person, that's 3. 1, 2, 3. But as far as the rolling dice mechanism is concerned, it applies the exact same way as with a weapon. It tells you how many dice to roll to begin with, how many additional damage that particular philosophy does, and then of course additional damage if you do the critical of 20 total pips or more. You win the discourse if you ever get the enemy's marker down to 0. If yours ever gets down to 0, then they win the discourse. The next mechanism is lock picking. If you're ever in a situation where you can pick a lock, for example, at a location where there's a chest and you see this lock icon, you can attempt to pick that lock. You begin by rolling 4 dice. You see what your total is, and what you're trying to do is reach the total of 20. It looks like I did that exactly on this first roll. So if I were to do that, I would immediately pick the lock and gain what it says. In this case, I dig through the cards and gain card 2. What happens if you don't immediately reach 20? Well, let's say that this was a 2 and a 1. I will then select the dice that I want to keep and re-roll what I don't want to keep. So I would probably re-roll these. This is a 10. So I'm going to lock these. I can never, once I lock them, I can't re-roll them. So I'm going to keep these. It's 10. I'm going to re-roll these. I got a 5 and a 3, so that puts me at 18. Now I can try to re-roll, but if I ever exceed 20, I fail the lock picking. The lock becomes impossible to break, and then I can't try to break it until I leave and come back. Now there is a way to force a lock, but it involves a very, very difficult skill test. But for all intents and purposes, this is how lock picking works. Now, if I want to not risk it and stay at 18, I could then pay the difference in health. I could take damage to add up to 20. So in this case, I would just take 2 damage on my character and I would pick the lock. Next is skill test. Now you're going to see these all over the place, sometimes on an event card, sometimes on a storybook encounter, lots of different places you might see this, but the same basic principle applies. You'll have a skill listed, so in this case, crafting, and then a number that you need to roll or exceed to be successful. In the case of Ven, let's say Ven is going to do this crafting skill test. I first look and see if he has any skills, whether on his particular person or any items that might give him those. We see right here that Ven has a crafting +1, okay? So I'm just gonna start there. I'm gonna take that, and then you roll a D10 and see what you get. All right, I've got a 3, and so I take 3 plus my crafting +1, so that's a total of 4. Doesn't quite meet the 7 that's here. Now, this time, you and other players in the party can play adventure cards. So let's say I play this toolkit. It says +3 crafting. So I'd add 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6, plus my crafting 1 is 7. In that case, I would succeed and thus ignore the penalty and gain the items that are here. Now, if I failed, this means that you gain no reward and can't make a repeat attempt. Sometimes you still might succeed, but you'll take a penalty. So in this case, if I chose not to fight the lizard wolf, I instead wanted to try to sneak away by doing a stealth check. If I failed, I'd still discard the enemy, but I would take 4 damage because it hurt us to try to sneak away from the enemy. Finally, I want to talk about your mind song and the spell songs that you can sing. Now, these are going to be things that can benefit you as you play. They're going to be some kind of lingering effect that's going to help you out. Now, notice that there is a cost here of 3, and this particular spell song is going to be 3. This is a minor venture action that you can do. Remember, you can do one of these per day. Let's say that Ven wanted to sing this spell song, which once per day gain a coin. That's pretty good. He needs to pay this cost. Now, throughout the game, you might collect music notes. So if you have any of those, you can spend these to go towards the cost of singing the song. So I spend these, but I'm still short 1, so I move this up the track here to finalize the cost. If I didn't have any of those music notes, I could make the whole total, pay the whole total by moving this 1, 2, 3. And now I have a disadvantage to my rolls of a -1. This represents the madness, essentially, of having this song stuck in your head, because once you sing it, it stays with you until you rest the next time. So you know how mad you can go by having a song stuck in your head. So, and if he chose to sing more songs or whatever, this would go up. And so he'd continue to be at an increasing disadvantage the more he would move this instead of paying the music notes to go towards the cost. Now, if you want to see those mechanisms in the context of a playthrough, I did recently do a live session of Song of Silveranth. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. Now we get into the portion of the video where I talk about some other considerations beyond just mechanics. The first one is the time commitment. Now, this is a campaign game through and through, and while there is a finite number of turns because of that event deck, even that can fluctuate. I don't know that you could really put an accurate time on the game itself, so really what you need to be able to do is just set aside a time to play the game, play in various chunks of time that you have to be able to set aside, save your progress, and then return the game when you have another hour or 2 to play. If you were to look at the games page on Board Game Geek, you'd see that the maximum amount of time you can spend on this game is 900 minutes. I don't even know if that's, you could probably spend more than that if you take your time and really think about what you're doing. And so there's really no final number I could give you. So you just need to be ready to spend a lot of time in this game, especially if you want to take advantage of all the content that's there. Speaking of content, there's a ton of it in this game. You can see just by the box size, it's the largest box that Red Raven has made. It's the most content in any one game that Red Raven has ever made. So there's a ton of stuff to explore and interact with. I'm told that there are over 600 cards that include quests and adventure cards and mind songs and equipment and all sorts of things that you're going to use to enjoy the game. Now, I spent about 10 hours in the world of this game in preparation for this video, and that wasn't even with the final version of the game. I was only able to explore 4 atlas spreads out of a total of 30. And even then, I wasn't able to see everything that those 4 atlas spreads had to offer in those 10 hours. So if you're looking for a game that rewards repeated plays, a lot to explore, that when you complete a campaign, you can't wait to get back in because you're thinking, what would have happened if we went to this place on the map or we explored this location? This game is going to offer those things for you. Now, I like to talk about the amount of table space a game takes up. I think that's an important consideration when you're buying a game. Now, surprisingly, with as large as the game is, Song of Silveranth doesn't really take up a ton of space on your table. I had no problem playing the game on this table, which is 2.5 feet by 5 feet. Now, I had plenty of room. I was playing solo, but I probably could have added a couple more people, although it might have been a little tight. Okay, now let's get into some game comparisons. I also think it's important for you to have a reference point of other games and how this game compares to those. Don't mind me, I'm gonna look at my notes here because I didn't memorize all this. But first, I want to talk about the hottest open world game right now, which is Vantage from Stonemaier Games. Now, it's interesting, in the acknowledgement section of the rulebook of Vantage, Jamie Stegmaier actually mentions Sleeping Gods as an inspiration of sorts for Vantage. Just some notes on what I observed. Vantage doesn't really give you a clear look of the world that you're exploring. You know, it's usually just in fragments via the location cards. But in Song of Silveranth, you see the entire map from the start. It's actually on the back of your journey log. So you always have a sense of at least where you are, where some points of interest are, that sort of thing, to help you have an idea of where you might want to go next. There's also much richer storytelling in Song of Silveranth, with a very talented team of writers crafting immersive and evocative encounters with their words. And while they're both open world exploration games, Vantage, you can play that game and be done in 2 hours and that's it. There's no campaign. You can just play short session after short session. But, then you don't have that deep storytelling and lore that has been built into this game, or at least in my opinion. So it's just a trade-off of how much time you want to spend in a world before moving on to something else, or if you really want to dig in and see what the world of Song of Silveranth has to offer. I think there's plenty of room to enjoy both styles of games, but I did want to point out how different those are, both of them being open world exploration games. I'm going to do a rapid fire list of campaign adventure games that maybe you've played, that if you liked those or elements of those types of games, you'll probably enjoy Song of Silveranth as well. The first on the list is any of Plaid Hat's adventure book games like Stuffed Fables, Aftermath, Familiar Tales. They've got the Atlas or the game book that you can play through. Destinies from Lucky Duck Games, Tainted Grail, any of its sequels, and Legacy of Dragonholt. I think if you enjoy the adventure style in those games, you'll probably enjoy Song of Silveranth. It's no secret, Sleeping Gods is my favorite game of all time. In fact, my most viewed video on this channel is my review of Sleeping Gods. If you haven't seen it, I invite you to check it out. But because of my love for that game and all the games in the system, the original, Distant Skies, Primeval Peril, I was so curious about what this game did that would be different from Sleeping Gods. I imagine there are probably many of you out there asking the same question, so I'm glad I can answer it. First of all, the same basic structure of the game is there. There's a huge world to explore depicted in a multi-page atlas, which contains numerous encounters to interact with. And you'll gain and complete quests, you'll meet quirky and dangerous characters, and you'll read vibrant stories that work together to weave an exciting and intriguing narrative over the course of your campaign. And like the others, it is a world so large that it can't even be all explored over the course of a handful of campaigns. So, if you've enjoyed the core elements of any of the Sleeping Gods games, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't enjoy Song of Silveranth. However, maybe you've played those games and thought, okay, something about this could be better. Maybe some things could be more streamlined. I don't particularly like how combat is done. Whatever the case, if you're curious about what has changed or what has been improved upon, now I'm going to get to those things. My first point is that I believe the gameplay is streamlined from those other games. I found that going from turn to turn to turn was very smooth. Thinking of things like the fast travel system, you simply can go to a place that has the haven symbol and you just go there. There's no you have to be in a certain place. You can just go there from wherever you're at, and that's pretty streamlined. Overall, I just found it to be a much smoother experience, and that even started with my second point, the setup. It was easier to set up and just get going. I don't know, I can't really point to the major differences that made that happen. It just seemed like the setup had fewer steps, and just getting going was less intrusive. Next is combat. Combat is completely different. Although I love the puzzle of the combat in the Sleeping God systems of covering the various squares to defeat an enemy, here, it's all essentially dice-based. But you're not just rolling dice. There's a pressure luck element. There's a should I keep rolling? Should I keep what I have? There's a lot to think about there instead of just I'm going to roll some dice and seeing what happens. Another thing that's different is enemies that actually move and chase you around, whether that's on the atlas or the locations that you explore. I think it's really neat to have enemies pursue you rather than them just show up in an encounter. And so I talked about how the enemies might chase you around in the locations. Those locations also give you opportunity to do some individual movement and individual choices with your characters. You all get in there as a party in the location, but there are various points of interest to explore. You can go one way, another person can go another, so you have some more individual choice when it comes to exploring those locations. Another thing, you use a lot of dice in this game, and for some people that might be a deal breaker. I get it. I know a lot of people don't want to leave major things up to chance, but I also find that, at least so far, the balancing of items, equipment, ways to mitigate those dice rolls, there's a pretty good balance there. So at no time did I ever feel like, oh, I'm just rolling ones all the time, so I'm always failing. I always felt like there was a good balance there. But again, just know that there's a lot of dice rolling in this game for the lock picking, combat, discourse challenges, and again, even just the skill checks in general. You're going to be rolling dice. Something that's huge that I think will be a big bonus for a lot of people is that you only control one character per person. In the original Sleeping Gods, you played as 9 characters regardless of if you're playing one person or a full group. Both, even in Distant Skies and Primeval Peril, even though the number of characters was reduced, you still had to play with all the characters. But in Song of Silveranth, you pick a character that you want to play as, and that's it. Again, the only exception being if you're solo, you play as 2 characters. But as long as you have 2 people, you only have to worry about 1 character per person. Another big difference is the setting, the theme. Song of Silveranth is definitely fantasy inspired, whereas the Sleeping Gods is like that 1920s pulp action, pulp adventure style. And, if I were to pick, I'd probably prefer that setting of the Sleeping Gods universe. But also, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing here in Song of Silveranth, and so I'm open to exploring the world more, and I'm excited to see what it has to offer. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is that as of this recording of this video, there are 2 ways to play the game. You can play Basic, which is essentially the way that I have played, where you're playing with your characters and there's not a whole lot to do with them other than what you do in the game. But then there's going to be an advanced mode that lets you do more character upkeep, in that you will gain XP for defeating monsters. You can use that XP to level up your character. You can also use it to buy or unlock items that only your character can use, again, if you reach a certain XP number. So there will be that option of, if you don't want to mess with all of that, you don't have to do that. Or if you want to take more control and invest more in your characters, that will be the optional advanced mode. Okay, the last section of this video is to briefly look over the campaign page. And I know you can do this yourself, but I just figured, hey, I'll cover it in the video and give you a head start. So the launch date of the campaign is November 3rd on GameFound, and I'll post a link to that project in the description of this video. But if you head over to the page now, and I'm going to do that right now, and you click follow, you will get a free gift of a promo pack of 10 tarnished artifact silver foil cards that you can add to the market deck that you'll be able to purchase throughout the game that you play. Now, quick reminder that the information I'm giving you and the version of this page that I'm recording is as of October 13th, 2025. So this is a preview of the pledge levels, but Red Raven Games has asked for feedback about the pricing and what you get for your money. So there is a chance that some of these things could change. So first of all, there are 2 editions, the standard and collectors. And it looks like the standard version contains the standard components, which are listed in this image. I'm not going to read them all, but they're there. And a stretch goal box, which includes all the completed stretch goals. Now, this edition has a price tag of $90. The collector's edition will contain everything from the standard edition, plus a number of upgraded components, including metal coins, glass exploration tokens, wooden music notes, wooden resources, extra dice, and miniatures for each character. Now, speaking of miniatures, now I want to take some time to show you off some examples of those. Now, again, these aren't finished, and I don't have a miniature for every character, but first of all, this is the party miniature that represents the entire party. It's Ven on a horse. Again, these are not professionally finished. They're just 3D printed for the sake of this preview copy. Then we have Ven himself. So you can see here what he looks like, what his miniature looks like. Then we have Urzoff. Urzoff's got this club here. And finally, we have Celeste. Looks like Celeste is going to be good at Discourse. She's got a book. She's ready to go. And see all the detail of the gear that she has. You saw a few of them, but if you don't have the version with the miniatures, you'll have these standees. I believe I just saw Ryan mention that he's going to be doing full-bodied standees instead of just their heads. So you'll have the detail of the people, more detail of them with the standees as you play. I'm not going to put them all out here. You get the artwork on the standees versus just the detail on the miniatures. Now, the miniatures come in the collector's edition. If you're only wanting the standees, they come in the standard edition. It looks like the collector's edition, at least right now, is priced at $140. And there are a number of different pledge levels here that we can see that include different editions of the game and bonus add-ons like an expansion, dice tower, foreteller game narration, and a game soundtrack. Now, I'm not going to break all these pledges down, but you can go to the Game Found for that information. But you can see these range in price from $90 to $230. Now, as of now, the majority of followers of the campaign have voted, "I'm very happy with the proposed pledge levels and can get what I want." But you can, of course, feel free to head over to the page and cast your vote to let them know what you think. All right, well, I hope you feel much more informed about Song of Silveranth than you did before you watched this video, and hope that you're able to decide for yourself if it's a good fit for you or not. Now, if you have any questions about the gameplay or my experience playing it or anything you've seen me cover in this video, please feel free to leave the question down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer it, and if I don't know off the top of my head, I'll do my best to find it for you. Also, here's a reminder to go watch my playthrough of the video. I did it live. It was great having the audience interact with me. But again, that will give you a great idea of the flow of the gameplay of Song of Silveranth. Finally, if you found this video to be informative, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd really appreciate it if you just left me a nice comment. Once again, my name is Spencer, and I want to thank you so much for watching.